go. I don't have to touch anything when it's, okay, sweet.
That's a yes. All right, well, welcome back to day 2 of our XR Summit. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you're enjoying the exhibit hall and the student showcase. We're looking forward to these talks coming up here. Again, my name is Jeremy Nelson, the Senior Director of the XR Initiative and the Media Design and Production Team here at the University of Michigan Center for Academic Innovation. Excited for these lightning talks. And next, we're going to hear from one of our own, Ray Majewski, an XR environment artist with the XR team at the Center for Academic Innovation. A range of his work has been realized through architectural things, theme park lands, furniture series, journal essays, experimental videos, educational curricula, installation design, and virtual production environments. He is passionate about clever solutions to design problems, is always striving for fun and imaginative processes to challenge him and those around him. As a creative, he is currently venturing into immersive works using various XR technologies. Eventually, he will be helping us work through creating a virtual art department for our new XR stage that we announced yesterday that will be up this summer. Along with his team, he'll be working with students and faculty and our broader media design and production team to understand LED in-camera visual effects, art production pipeline, and how do we assist making new courses with this technology. I'm happy today to announce Ray. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Beside me, so yeah, welcome to the talk. This is sort of going to be like an introduction of a tool that I've been using, so like I'll go into it in the slides, but following the presentation with the slides, we're going to have sort of like a live demo just to show you like actually how easy the tool is to use, to kind of like, I think it's sometimes fun to see the shop talk within it, so it's like, it's cool to see people's work, but it's really fun sometimes to like open it up to really see actually how accessible it is to technology for certain things, and I think some of these tools are really easy to dip into and want to share. And this is Eric Schleffler. So Eric is an XR developer with the team here, and he's going to be helping out with the live link demo. So I wanted to spotlight sort of the team. Like, I'm giving the talk, but it's also a lot of people's effort and work in it. So I want to highlight them because this wouldn't be possible without them. So kind of challenge, what the heck is a MetaHuman? I think that there's like a lot of talk right now. I come from like an architecture background, and so like before I talk about like the MetaHuman, I want to talk about like this real human. So this is me. My chosen avatar would probably be this Burbank hedge. So if you're ever in Burbank, you can go check out this hedge. It's somewhere around like one of the restaurants. You'll see it. It's near a thrift shop. It's really great. And so like my background, as Jeremy said, sort of like I was a creator or maker, so I'm not necessarily like someone that's like obsessed with tools, but I'm really obsessed with like doing ideas and sort of like thinking and talking with people and creatively finding sort of like what would be. So like I was like, in the top left is like a design session at Imagineering when I was working on Toy Story Land and sort of some of the projects and fabrication that I went through. I was a design instructor, so like have led like 29 design studios and really had to help like a divergent group of students like discursively understand sort of like what they're trying to create and what tools would help get them there. And paper collage is like an analog tool, and build furniture, and kind of realized, and the furniture and the built objects is what got me into XR actually. So I was gonna enter in and be a furniture object designer, and I had like a fear of arthritis and also the COVID pandemic. I had no access to a workshop. And so that kind of like launched me into this like thesis that I did here of understanding like Unreal Engine, and my thesis is a long step. You enter into a digital version of the island where I was raised, and It's been used in a lot of movies, so it's like a scenographic backdrop that commodifies a lot of things. But sort of my work into this like XR venture and understanding the tools digitally was you were a dolphin that would drive around the town as you approach the island like every tourist does across the bridge. And it's really incredibly difficult to drive, and you got to reach the endpoint. But then you meet a bunch of seagulls, and the seagulls are the occupants. And that was kind of my step into like the tools of like what's possible. So what the heck is the MetaHuman is kind of like the craziest tool for me, I think, is like you see on Instagram, there's a lot of people, like coming from architecture, a lot of people take beautiful architecture photos. And some of the photos are missing people. A lot of them are missing people. Or there's like an awkwardness of like capturing people. And oftentimes in the environments, it's really impersonal and people are removed sort of from this. And so like the ability to sort of like access like humans and populate digital scenes is actually like a really incredible tool for when you're trying to develop stories or narratives or like simulations and things that are happening. Because a lot of these digital worlds, you're sort of like, and I'll say this is a subset, these are hyper realistic. So like the framework is that you can kind of like scan yourself and recreate and represent yourself in a hyper realistic way. And sort of like, I'm gonna play, I think, just to like set a standard so everyone's on the same baseline. I'm gonna play the 1-minute intro that was released 2.5 years ago that kind of talks about the tool itself. That way, so.
I can be one of many.
Je vous présente l'architecte.
You create the narrative. I'm MetaHuman.
Yeah, and so you're going to see like parametrically, you're given a lot of sliders sort of on the human. You can adjust these sliders and sort of begin to sculpt. And you see like anamorphically how this avatar in real time is being altered to like a varying range. And it's an editor tool that's launched with inside your browser. So you don't need to necessarily run like, I'm going to break into, this is hosted through the Epic Games Bridge with Unreal Engine. So there is sort of an entry point when it comes to like the technology to launch the engine and stuff like that, but actually developing it can be done like on a Chromebook through the tool itself. And like once we kind of discovered this tool and it came out here on the team, Jackson was here somewhere in the audience. I saw him earlier. Sort of the feature is really, really accurate recreation of the MetaHuman was something that for our team, like we were being slated at the time, a lot of virtual production projects to where we're trying to shoot videos and sort of like do historical recreations and talk about simulations. And we're really, I'm like the artist or the 3D content creator, so there's only one of me on the team. And so for a lot of small teams, these sort of like tools that are making really great production quality faster and faster and accessible, it's something that is like super beneficial for a team of 4 people with 2 developers, a project manager, Jeremy, myself. So like and student fellows that are endlessly talented. But it allows us to produce like on a professional scale, which is like will be quoted by Epic all the time. And to kind of show, there's like a lot of digital worlds and other tools out there, like there's Real Illusion, and I'm not like a plug for Epic here, so I'm not like trying to like post a product. But like when you're trying to like create a digital human and the competitor that's of an equal caliber is $990 for the equivalent tool set, it really makes it like inaccessible for people to actually sort of start creating. There's like a huge barrier. And that's where like the knowledge of the tools, and we don't have to play this, but like Spatial is this new digital world creator, and they partnered with Ready Player Me, which I think is like, MetaHumans is creating sort of like a hyper realistic recreation of like how you're trying to present like an actual human. Where like I think Ready Player Me is actually quite exciting in a way that it makes customizing really fun, sort of like poppy or non-realistic characters accessible and how you're presenting and playing inside a digital realm. So there is a spectrum of like how these avatars are being embraced across the spheres, but that's not necessarily my interest like in this part, but I just want to like make it known that this is a thing here and it should go. And the reason sort of like why I think the MetaHuman is like proliferating is like one of the creator tools that is like kind of going to streamline creators is the network. So like at the GDC State of Unreal, Epic announced this fab thing, which is a collection of all their sort of acquired IP, and they're combining it into like an accessible sort of marketplace location to where you can generate your MetaHuman on the same thing where you're getting sort of like kit bashing parts, or you're trying to understand materials and you're really good at modeling and you can get it. And so it really makes sense to stay within the same ecosystem as you're creating this MetaHuman. And I sort of like have like created here, this is the MetaHuman. You can actually see, like we can go back to that, but I have brought in my MetaHuman into the dress very similar to me today. And on the creator, it's actually like, so what you do is you log in, you click launch, you click create, and you can start to begin the sculpting. And if you want to get like hyper realistic MetaHumans, what you have to do is you have to scan. So like everyone with an iPhone today or sort of like a Android, there's things called photogrammetry apps, and you can also use video. And what you would do is you kind of create, it's a digital recreation of the face mesh, and their tool will help align the mesh of the MetaHuman over your face. So that way it can get you anatomically quite correct to like what you're trying to do here. And you can start to see, it really looks like some like scary dystopian stuff. It kind of is, I'm not gonna lie about that. It really gets a little frightening very quickly, but as I said, it's a tool. So if you have like a specific need of what you're trying to create, this is the way that you would create. And for creators like optimization, these are highly detailed and sort of highly complex, and so they can give you levels of detail that as you're working in scenes that can like optimize your system and with it. And the reason why this tool is cool, it's like you take a picture of an image and an image will tell you it's flattened within that scene, but it's when you add the animations, sorry, I'm not used to doing this. I don't really like that, but it's when it comes to life that's like the most exciting. Oh, that sounds way better. When it comes to life, that it's most exciting. So like there's this company, Move AI, and I kind of had been like stalking them for about a year. And after so many emails and exchanges and like getting in touch with this company, if anyone's sort of like doing creations with like animations, this is like, if the MetaHuman creator sort of opened up our ability to have digital humans in our projects by streamlining that process, Move AI is like streamlining the process by months. And so like traditionally it would take you months to develop and sculpt a human in texture and get it photorealistic. And so like Move AI is doing the same exact thing with animations. And like obviously we were lucky enough to be at an institution that has a budget, so you can buy 6 iPhones and run it from it. So you can like have a full kit. But like if you have a bunch of friends with iPhones, you can band together and capture animations of what you're trying to do. And to kind of launch into the case study of like what the heck is the MetaHuman is like, we're working with this project. I saw Mike Barger here yesterday. I don't know if he's here today, but shout out Mike if you're here. Is that he is the instructor sort of on this Coursera project. So we're currently running the Future of Work series, which is a collection of 10 courses through Coursera. And within Coursera, we're trying to bring like extended reality tools to the production and how we're either giving education through the XR process or how we're producing it through XR. And this like project kind of came on our slate to where we had a need to create a mass amount of people quickly because we were trying to recreate the energy of an airport scene and understanding specifically how do you have someone go through a leadership simulation model of like a high stakes where they're trying to navigate like concerns of different stakeholders like customers and like varying managers, and you have to respond within real time. And this was like a hyper specific real use for the tool, so like it's just like why we're presenting it. But the problem is with like the FAA, you can't go into an airport and just shoot for security concerns. You can't just like get access and go in there. Like maybe a TikToker can like bring their phone, but you can't bring a full production crew. It's just like national security is not a thing. And so this seemed like a really advantageous project to sort of take in with the digital recreation of the airport and sort of like the skills of understanding like how can we shoot this digitally with these MetaHumans and actually give them a chance to shine to where this would be like the proper project that would afford for it to come through. And in it, sort of like with Move AI, you like set up the scenes and you can kind of like understand logistically where the real human's going to be and how that digital human of the MetaHuman can come through. And so it takes a lot of prep, specifically a really, really, really large Figma board and logistics of how you're going to script the digital humans. Because like at this point, we have the digital human in, and we'll go to the creator tool in a second, but you have the human in, you have the environment, but like what's next? And so that's where like the creative part comes in, where it's like not the tool doing the work, but it's really the creative team and how they're envisioning the scene unfold. And sort of like through it, like you can start to see the combinations of like move with like, this is the calibration test like in the beginning, and then you'd do the T-pose and it like locks in. And yeah, shout out Jeff, I don't think he's here either. But what's really incredible is that like this would have taken to keyframe all the animations of the fingers and the body a really, 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 really long time of like a AAA designer that's getting paid probably like, you know, like $7 to $8 grand a month, like at like a games company, and that's just like not accessible for a lot of people. And so like with this tool, with Move AI in combination with the MetaHuman creator, which you'll see the demo in a bit, is like any kind of creator with like a group of friends that can capture with their phones can start to like bring the scenes to life as like a creator tool. So like, I know it's called like, what the heck is a MetaHuman? And we'll see that. But like to me personally, the MetaHuman is really not that interesting. It's more of like the process of how the tool has actually streamlined the creation to come through. And I think like, yeah, tools and technology are flashy, but when the ideas come down, you can see how accessible it is. I just hope that like through the demo in a second, you can see like this is something you can go do, and you're welcome to come speak to our team and like always reach out to us, and like if you need help, because like we're problem solving like in the moment on it. But I think it's like a really inspiring time. And so this is sort of like with the MetaHumans, this was a sizzle reel we did. So Move was going to South by Southwest, and we were asked to like, we're kind of in this like weird position to where these tools are created for game designers and people are doing entertainment and short film. But like Michigan's kind of in this weird position where we have a virtual production stage, which is like only a few universities have it. And so like we're trying to leverage all these tools to present ourselves as like this, like, I guess we're kind of like a design firm at this point, or a design consultancy, but there's not many education sort of like organizations that are trying to produce like of a certain level, like with the stage and have all the industry tools. And so Move really took interest in us and what we're trying to do with it. And so we were invited to present, and this was sort of like the clip of the scene. And this was like pre-scripting, sort of like this was just like, Jim is here somewhere. Jim and I and a bunch of team members were sort of like messing around in the lobby and trying to record our animations of understanding what like angry customers look like. And there's a lot more bleeping and a lot of cuss words like within this, but sort of like within the scene. But realistically, like that would have like never been possible, like even 2 years ago, like to accessibly get like the digital humans within the scene and like create that scene and sort of like situate them within the context of a digital space. That just like is not possible. And there's this new sort of like thing that came out at GDC where they show the state of Unreal, where you're seeing like today the live link demo headset to where we're going to place it on, and what it's doing is it's using the depth sensor camera on your iPhone, and it's analyzing your face, and it's going to translate those motions to the digital human. So that, and it looks a little wonky, I'm not going to lie, it's not perfect. It's like it's like pretty close, but it's like still uncanny in a way that's like a little uncomfortable at times. But this tool sort of like has like coming forward, it's like a video instead of using the sensor like through the streamed app, and like you're gonna see sort of like how shockingly close it gets. And so like for us as an education department, so like what is a MetaHuman? If you're trying to tell a story or develop like, or you know, sense of empathy or audio or voice, you can have like a nice lav mic next to this video while it's recording, and you can really capture in the moment, sort of like where right now we're disjointed in how we're producing it. But now if we jump to 322, we're gonna see the animations. So within a couple of minutes, it processes it. So the video you just saw this woman sort of record is now going to play within editor. And this was in like 2 or 3 minutes. This was like generated within the scene. So like our process of sort of like working with educators, or like trying to develop the scene of like you have maybe like a talking head video, or you're trying to have like a consultation simulation. Like the fact that we can have 2 people sort of just wearing the mics and recording and have a natural conversation and then bring that digitally. The question is, why would you do that? I think also like you have to constantly retrospectively like revisit your process, and why are you making it digital? Does it need to be digital? and sort of what are you trying to bring through. But at least for us, like the MetaHuman, oh, of course it timed out. That's crazy. But I'm going to set up, this is my MetaHuman. I actually dressed like them today, which is kind of nerdy, but I wore the same shoes. So I was like making a hat last night, and I was like, okay, like maybe I can get close. That is what I look like with my head shaved. It's just like I can't shave my head because then we have 3 people with shaved heads on the team, and so there's like logistical concerns of like how do we like balance on certain things. No, I can't. I was gifted with the bird's nest, so with it I can kind of show within the creator here of you can sculpt. This was doing sort of like the photogrammetry scan, and I'm willing to like share any resources I have, but like if you want to like blend face animations, sort of like it will go with strength here. You can sort of combine different characters that might have features, or you can like reduce the strength like on the face. It did a really good job with my face, so I didn't really have to like modulate it or adjust it too much, but you can start to see sort of things, and like you can get really close with the eyes, so like you can sort of get like the iris like perfect to like what you'd be. You might not even know what your eyes look like. I didn't before I did this. I actually learned a lot about my face. I didn't realize I had like a crooked smile until like I scanned this, and then like I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh yeah, I do have that. And so I think you learn a lot of weird things. It's kind of awkward. But like the hair, so like April, if you were here for the keynote yesterday, I do want to say like limitations also of this. I think it's, they're doing their best, I think, in terms of time. Like the way they're like rendering the hair strands is a little different than traditionally how hair has been done with like graphic cards and textures on it. But there's like a large mix. The skin tone like range is really great. There's like a lot of representation of how you can actually get sort of like freckles and sort of like you know, like wrinkles in like certain places, and like the range is far more sort of like I guess like the word would be representational of like actually what like the humans look like versus like other tones of like skin tone range on other creators that give you like 8 options. And like that's not really fair, sort of like how you represent yourself and putting people in a position where they're representing in a way and masking or embodying a character that is not themselves. And there's like ethical things that come in like as a creator, like you have the power to create any human. But like ethically, like where do you stand with this, and like why are you using it in this tool? And I think like thinking about those thoughts. But like with other creators, like Eric's worked a lot with hair. We're doing a project sort of with like this team. It's called Black Performance Social Protest. And when this creator came out, it actually did like a horrible job with understanding different hair colors for black hair. So like we worked with this like the hair designer, Eric can speak on this, but like we work specifically with like hair designers to help us actually, how do you do within the play? They work with the Detroit Playhouse and like the Opera House. And how do you sort of like create this and represent the way that these actors sort of as we're casting can represent to themselves, and not just like assign defaults and sort of like presets. And this has been like sort of a concern of like, we're understanding limitations of the tool, and like ethically, like where does this fall in? Like they don't even have messy hair, so I actually I can't even do my hair. This is like the closest one, and I like don't even look like, come on. But it is fun kind of to see like what you would look like with certain haircuts. I think like if you ever seen Princess Bride, like true love, like this is like the haircut. My name is Montoya, prepare to die. But, so like yeah, you can kind of like dress yourself, and it gets like to be a really weird time. Like I think like if I could grow certain facial hair, it would like be like a really interesting moment. But with that transition, I think like it's highly customizable, and you can recreate yourself really easily. And if any of you need help, I'd be willing to give time to like help you sort of like hear your projects, not just like how you want to use the tool, but really how are you trying to navigate this. And as we move into like virtual production, we have a small team, and so if you think like, so to explain virtual production or smart stages, I don't remember, I sent the video to Jeremy, but it's sort of this like giant LED wall, and you stand. And traditionally you would do it with like green screen, but like now we're presenting sort of like the camera, and it's rendering the digital content from the engine so we can step within. And so like when I load Unreal Engine, sort of like in here, you can step it with inside. And so like as we start to build out scenes, or as I'm like working with educators to think about their digital scenes, there's like a huge need actually to like reactivate the spaces, because you can only do so much with a digital environment. So trying to understand like how do you actually populate it and add life and energy to these scenes is like, I think not just like someone that can leverage a tool really well, but someone that can contextually understand what it means to direct, or sort of be like a cinematographer and a producer and really start to develop that from the viewpoints. And luckily we have like a really great team here. We recently merged, but the media design team is really good at like this kind of stuff. And so like coming with a robust team, we can really like build some stuff out. So what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna add in a MetaHuman. I already added in Eric, but it's gonna take a second. We couldn't preset it because the IP address would change. So we now have to enter in the IP addresses, but you get to see in real time, like actually what the process is like. We mostly just couldn't do it because it wouldn't work if we did it. But how am I running on time? Oh yeah, we have enough time. That's great. And you can ask questions like while you're here. I can troubleshoot and talk while I'm working. If anyone.
Questions? Anyone use MetaHuman?
Under Move AI.
You're projecting well.
Under Move AI, how many people can you capture at a time?
So,
Limited one?
yeah, there's a couple answers to that. It's not a set one. So as of recent, they have shifted the goalpost back. It was with 6 iPhones, you could accurately capture, Eric, if you could look at the IP address on here. You could accurately capture 3 individuals, but there was like speculation and people really pushing the boundaries. So if you join Discord, you can see the experimental modes. They've recently pushed that goalpost back to 8 people. We did a 5-person capture just because we haven't had a lot of time. We've had a lot of deadlines in the summit coming up, so we haven't tried to push it. Mostly because we also sometimes don't have 8 people in the office. But it is exceptionally good. And the proximity says up to like 18 feet, so like 6 meters-ish. And I really think that can be like expanded. Also, if you have a really good relationship with them, there's a lot of talk about, it's just like their backend and how they're processing sort of like all your data and the captures. And so I think you can actually ask the flex that processing sort of power and like what the demands are and like different credits and stuff. But we have done like this recent capture last week, we did a couple person shoot. There are bugs necessarily within like, so the MetaHuman, the translation I'll show you, when you export from Move to the MetaHuman, it's like pretty seamless actually. The retargeting is incredible. The problem I would say is sometimes your app connectivity drops. And so it's more of like hesitancy or fear that strikes into you when you're recording scenes. So if you have 8 people that are acting, and these are highly trained actors, and you're doing an incredible job scripting and directing, and they meet all their cues and marks, you might be super pleased with it. And you're like, this is incredible. And then you go to export, and a connection on one of your devices dropped. And so the question becomes like, where's the high stakes within the capture? And the technology will get there. They've made a lot of changes, and they're a great team that are constantly troubleshooting. 2007. Sorry, we are breaking into this phone. There you go. So yeah, it's more of like strategically, like coming from like the film and working with people here that have been in that industry. How do you break up your shoots in chunks that allow you sort of to like composite them? And it's like it's a trickery. So anything beyond 8 is experimental, but you can do a lot.
Other questions while we're still seeing how the sausage is made? No?
I guess.
Can you describe what you're going to show here?
Yeah. So there's going to be, it's just like, so basically like they walk you through if anyone's interested. You have your Unreal Engine running. You pull your MetaHumans down to your engine. And so you create them, you craft them, you pull defaults, whatever you need to do. The bone system in them is like highly complex. That's sort of like what makes MetaHumans pretty robust is that, you know, they are updating the control rig. So control rig is like the rig that's like linked to the skeleton. So a bone skeleton is basically like little like toothpick kind of things that are inside the mesh, and it allows the mesh to bend. So like we have bones, so it's very much like our real bodies. It will allow the mesh to bend. And what's going to happen is when I assign the MetaHuman animation, it's actually just bones, and it's feeding information to each of those bones and the joints, and it's going to tell it how to move within a sequence. So that's probably step one. You just got to have everything in your content browser, which is up here. And I can't import I don't have a MetaHuman skeleton present in the project, so I can't import the actual animation yet because there's no control rig to assign it to. But once you pull the MetaHumans, they arrive sort of in the content browser.
Should be connected.
Okay, it's connected. So MetaHumans, MetaRay, drag MetaRay there. So you can pull it down. It comes into like your little store. Think of it as like your shelf or inventory. I'm looking very scary and naked here. That is frightening. And so you pull them into your scene. You're like, actor, you got to get over there, and you drag him in. I feel like, is mine just not going to give me clothes? Yours shockingly got dressed really quick, like Jetson style.
You know that nightmare where you go to class and you're naked in front of the whole
So yeah, that's exactly happening as we speak. And I know we're pressed on time. We're coming up onto it. So does the next talk start right after this one? Oh, shoot. So yeah, I wish this was going faster. That was my fault. So yeah, we can do it. Do you have one phone connected already?
Sure.
Which the system on here? It's XR mocap. I don't know why it wouldn't be working. Are you on the app?
Mm-hmm.
It's not loading. All right, well, I don't know. Should we just restart anyway? Well, that's embarrassing. Live demos. We were done 1 minute ago. So live demos are not fun. They're very hard.
Do we have any buffer between the next one?
No. So
Tell them to come by the booth, our booth in the summit.
within it. I don't know why it's not recognizing the phone.
Tell them to stop by our booth later.
Yeah, I think that, I'm so sorry. I don't know why the network is not connecting. But you can stop by our booth, and I want to respect Courtney's time.
In the exhibit hall, if you want to see it. So you can basically animate the face by wearing this facial rig here using the iPhone, which is pretty cool. Well, any questions for Ray or Eric about this technology? No? All right.
All right, well, let me skedaddle. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can you go back there and get mic'd up, please? Quick. All right. No worries. Do you have your computer?
Yeah, do I need to run it off my computer? Or is
Yes.
it, oh, okay.
Yep, sorry, I didn't have it loaded. Okay, we're excited for our next speaker, Cortney Harding. She is an experienced founder and content creator. She is an in-demand expert as one of the few people who can not only translate the impact of the digital revolution from Web 2 to Web 3 and its impact on businesses, but also how the metaverse can become the new frontier to create better and more accepting communities. As the founder of the award-winning agency Friends with Holograms, She was a pioneer who created VR training pieces around topics like child abuse, workplace exclusion, mental health, Black maternal mortality, and racial bias for companies like Lowe's, Walmart, PwC, Amazon, Target, and more. Her work was honored as the Best VR AR of 2019 at the Mobile World Congress, at a South by Southwest Innovation Award finalist at South by Southwest, and a top HR product by HR Executive. She is currently working with Meta to help shape strategy around learning and training in the metaverse, and was instrumental in creating What is the Metaverse?, a groundbreaking course that covers all aspects of the metaverse while exploring safety issues, ethical questions, and much more.
All right.
It's showing up as a second display.
Is this working?
Do you want to mirror the display or just drag it up?
Right here.
No,
I plugged it. Do I have to plug something else
it's
in?
just not mirroring. 1 second. Sorry, we just had a quick last second switch. It's popping up over there. Shoot. Yeah. I just can't see. Do you want to? Yes, tell jokes.
I know. I wish I was funnier. I wish I could do like a stand-up routine. All right. I know this is always the time when it's like we are actually technology experts. You know, I've taught at many universities, and yeah, I'm a technology expert. What thing do I plug in where? Aha!
In the settings menu?
Okay, now I got it.
I gave up.
Yay! All right. Woohoo! All right. Now, where is it on this screen?
Yep, your main menu.
Okay, wait, hang on. I'm not seeing it on the screen. So do I?
You just have to hit next. You can do this. You're gonna walk around? You're gonna,
Yeah, I'll walk around. Why not? Oh, I can't lose that.
it's not gonna
Don't let me lose that thing.
All right, I'll just advance for you. Go ahead.
Or I can, or do you want me to just use the clicker? All right.
You don't have this book.
I'll go for you. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, why not? So, like I said, I'm Cortney Harding, and I am here to talk about artificial intelligence, what I call small language models, and I'll talk about that in a second, and basically how we can combine a lot of emerging and new technologies to make our lives a lot easier and better, because we can actually create avatars based on everything that we have written and said and recorded and put out into the world. Those avatars can then essentially do a lot of our work for us, and we can go live our lives and do other things. So this presentation is really about how I plan on making my avatar do all my work. So let's go to the next slide. So like I said, I'm Cortney, and these are some of my avatars. So you'll see this one is my Horizon Worlds avatar. It's pretty good, not perfect. Obviously, I exist below my waist. And then the other one, which is kind of in a weird position leaning back, is my spatial avatar. These are just two examples of the avatars that I use on a pretty regular basis when I am doing work or socializing or hanging out or teaching in the metaverse. So the cool thing with this is, you know, I can be represented in the metaverse, but the downside is that I am the one driving these avatars. So when I am in these spaces, it's me talking, right? So what that means is, as much fun as I'm having, as much as I enjoy it, it is work. It is time that I could be spending doing something else, whatever that something else is, that I'm spending driving my avatar, talking to people, socializing, moving around. So let's go to the next slide. And this is just an example of all of the things that I have said about the metaverse in my life, right? So I've done talks for The Economist about branding, about augmented reality, about social work in VR. So I have all of this content online. I've been working in this space since 2016, right? I've been doing this a long, long time. And consequently, I've written a lot of articles. I've written books. I've done a lot of presentations. I have written blog posts. I've posted on social media. Like, I have generated a ton of content, as have most of us, right? Whether it's because we're experts in a space, whether it's because we're just passionate about something, whether it's just because we like posting on Twitter all the time when we could actually be doing other things, right? Most of us have a pretty broad base of content on the web. The problem is it just sits there, right? These videos don't have huge counts, you know? I'm not gonna pretend that I'm some like person who generates a lot of YouTube traffic, right? I'm not Mr. Beast. But, you know, people do watch these, but they kind of have to come find them, right? If somebody's looking for me to speak at an event, if someone's looking for me to do something, then people come watch this. But overall, these things that I have spent a lot of time and effort generating just sit there. So that's what I want to explore today. How do we change that? And how do we change that for the better? So let's go to the next slide. So what's the current state of affairs right now, right? Avatars exist, obviously. And they can be programmed as chatbots. So there is a way to program an avatar such that it will interact with other avatars using some form of artificial intelligence. However, right, they require scripting. So right now, you can go to one of the many DIY chatbot platforms, and there's a lot of them out there. You can create a chatbot, you can upload it, you know, connect it to your avatar, but you have to write a script, right? You really have to create the content. Now, you could theoretically like cut and paste content, but it's not very smart. It's kind of dumb. Like, how many of you have ever dealt with like a bank chatbot or a, you know, health insurance chatbot, right? Where you can clearly tell it's a robot answering, right? It's looking for keywords. It's not really interacting with you. It's certainly not picking up your intent. And it's useful enough in the sense of like, it'll find your records, it'll find your account, it'll ask you basic questions. But it doesn't go any further than that, and so that's where things get challenging, and that's where the opportunity lies. So right now, we have a lot of large language models, right? I can go online, I can go on ChatGPT and ask it to write a poem about my friend's cat in the style of Edgar Allan Poe, and it will give me something, right? If you teach here, probably some of your students have asked it to write a term paper, and it has spit back something that is probably kind of gibberish, right? It's just starting out, but what it's doing is it's scraping the totality of the internet. It's not being specific, right? And so what I'm interested in is like, how do we get specific about this? So right now, avatars that are not programmed as chatbots have to be self-directed. So again, if I go into the metaverse as my avatar, I have to be the one talking, listening, interacting, all of that stuff. And again, it's a net increase to your quote-unquote work. Right? It's an hour that I'm spending working in the metaverse that I could be reading a book, going to dinner with a friend, sleeping, doing whatever else I want to do. So let's go to the next slide. So here's a future state that I'm really interested in making happen. My avatar will be programmed with my entire digital history, and I can let that avatar go into the metaverse and converse with other people and interact with other people without me having to do a thing. I can be hanging out, and my avatar can be working. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide. So again, why, right? This is Huck Finn. Huck Finn famously, you know, convinced everyone else that painting the fence was fun, and then he went and sat under a tree and took a nap while everyone else did the work. Now, what Huck Finn did is kind of funny. It's also, in fact, very exploitative. But the nice thing with this is you're exploiting yourself. Right? I'm sending my avatar to do my work, but my avatar's work is based on my own work. So, and of course, avatars are not sentient beings, they're just avatars, so there's no exploitation anywhere. Now, of course, you do need to be direct about the fact that your avatar is programmed as opposed to a live human. I think there are ways to be very clear and upfront about that, so, you know, that's a thing that we need to consider. But you can essentially make yourself do all your work without generating extra work for you, right? So the easiest way to sort of think about this is if any of you are older, or near 40s, 50s and up, or you like classic rock radio, you might have heard of a band called Creedence Clearwater Revival. Now, when they signed their first record deal, they did not talk to a lawyer. They just signed the paper, took the money. Well, the band, became a huge success. They broke up. John Fogerty, the lead singer, wanted to go solo. So he recorded a solo album. The label he had been signed to sued him for sounding too much like himself. This is like a famous lawsuit in music history. It's funny, right? It's funny, it's silly. But I think what it goes to show is like you could almost create this avatar in that style where the avatar will sound like you and act like you, but you don't have to worry about that because you're consenting to it. So let's go to the next slide. So again, why do we want to do this? What's interesting about this to us in terms of our workload? So, eventually we're going to spend a lot more time in the metaverse. We're going to be working, we're going to be socializing. It's still pretty niche technology right now, but according to many estimates, it's coming, and it's coming rather quickly. So, we all have jobs, we all do stuff, and a lot of us have jobs where we like some of what we do, and we dislike some of what we do, right? I don't know of anyone on earth who likes every single thing about their job. Everyone has tasks that they do that they don't particularly enjoy, right? So I'll give you an example. I love creating VR, I love creating content, I love executive producing content, I like speaking, I like writing. All of these things I love to do, I'm happy to do them. I don't like filling out spreadsheets. Every time someone sends me an Excel spreadsheet, I die inside just a little bit. Every time someone sends me an Asana link, I die inside just a little bit. And every time I have to go do sales for my agency, I cringe just a little bit because 9 out of the 10 sales calls I do are pointless. It's the 10th that works, but I have to take time and effort and energy with those other 9, right? Now that's not the best use of my time. The best use of my time is for me to focus on what I'm good at because that's what gets the results and let other people do what I'm not good at. But if you run a small business, right, you can't necessarily hire all those people. You have to do these things. What if you could make your avatar do them, right? That's gonna save you time, that's gonna save you money, and then once you've done that, you can focus on doing what you're good at, doing what you enjoy, and then getting out into the world, right? Go fishing, go hiking, go see your friends, go have a life, whatever. So that's what we're really interested in. Next slide. So the other thing we can do is really make things more efficient. Like, no one likes waiting in line. This is terrible. Every time you have to wait in line, that's a failure on someone's part in terms of planning, right? That is a failure of efficiency. So why can't your avatar just do this stuff for you? Now, obviously, your avatar can't, go to Trader Joe's and stand in the huge line. Or could they, right? There are ways your avatar, programmed with your knowledge, could actually do your grocery shopping based on everything they know about you, based on the information you fed it. And then your groceries just show up at your house, and cool, you're done. You don't have to go to a store, stand in line, walk around, all of these things that people tend not to enjoy, tend to take up a lot of time, and tend to make us all less efficient, right? AI-powered avatars can really end the concept of time theft. So I'll share a story. My husband got laid off in January from his job, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna file for unemployment. Cool. Well, it turns out during COVID, somebody had stolen his social security number and filed a fraudulent unemployment claim. He didn't know about it for reasons, thank you, New York State. So he spent hours every day on the phone, tracking people down. Call this hotline between 2 p.m. and 2:45 p.m. every other Tuesday, and maybe somebody will answer. This is a person who is a relatively senior person at his bank, who was making good money, whose hourly rate was pretty high. All of a sudden, he's less efficient because he's sitting on hold with some department of New York State trying to figure this out. There is no reason his time should be wasted that way. That's absurd, right? This is something his avatar could have very easily done and interacted with an avatar on the other end of the phone, right? And the nice thing about avatars, as opposed to actual humans, there can be an infinite number of them. So all of a sudden, you don't have staffing problems, right? You don't have to outsource, you don't have to worry about any of that. You can just create as many digital avatars, spin them up, pull them down. You don't have to fire them. You don't have to give them health insurance. You don't have to do anything. They can do all the work for you. Now, where that gets interesting and where you shouldn't be afraid of that is like, look, the digital avatar at this point will only get you so far. Then you got to go to the next step. So it's when you go to the next step that a human can come in. So this is not about like destroying every customer service person forever. This is about letting them be good at what they're doing. This is about letting them solve more complex problems, while the easy stuff that they probably don't like solving just gets done automatically. So that's where I really see us going. Let's go to the next slide. Just make sure, okay, about time. Uh-oh. Maybe this really is the end of the line. All right, here we go. So let's talk about another benefit. Networking stinks, right, for the most part. It can be really fun to meet people in your industry. It can be fun. But a lot of these networking events are just a grind. You wind up talking to people who are perfectly lovely people, but they're not interested in what you're selling. You're not interested in what they're selling. And it sucks up a lot of time and energy, and there's no really good way around it. You have to connect with people. You have to talk to people. But this is like a problem that just doesn't have a solution. So what you could do is this. You could have a virtual networking session where your avatar and other avatars go in, and let's say your avatars talk to other avatars, and like 9 of those conversations will probably go nowhere. Cool, no one's time is wasted. The 10th conversation goes somewhere, amazing. You get a ping that's like, hey, our avatars like swiped right on each other. Let's do an actual phone call. So you've saved tons and tons and tons of time. And again, because your avatar is infinitely replicable, you can be in 50 different networking sessions. Now, there will be a lot of noise and clamor, but again, it kind of doesn't matter because these avatars are just out there in the universe, out there in the digital world, and it doesn't necessarily matter that they're just all going all the time, right? And so this is a way to really narrowcast and a way to really maximize the value of connections that you've made. Now, will it be perfect all the time? Of course not. But it's going to narrow things down dramatically and make everything more efficient. So let's go, we're almost done. No, other way. Here we go. So let's also talk about emotional labor. There we go. Let's also talk about emotional labor, right? If you've worked a customer service job, and I have, I've worked at coffee shops, I've been a waitress, you know, the amount of smiling you have to do, and oh, I'm getting sexually harassed, but it's okay. Let me take tip, please, right? It sucks. It's terrible. People can be very friendly, but at the end of the day, you know, it's tiring to smile and be peppy after 8 hours on your feet making coffee for people. So what this can do is, again, eliminate the need to do all that emotional labor. Your avatar can be doing it for you. Your avatar can be the one who's smiling and friendly and peppy and out in the world. And you can, I can just be my like misanthropic self in my room until something surfaces, and then I can be nice, right? So I think the idea is that for, people talk about AI disproportionately impacting lower wage workers. And on one hand, maybe that's true. But on the other hand, it can make their lives a lot better. It can strip out a lot of the negativity and let them focus on what they're good at, right? So you don't have to, do all of the niceties and the pleasantries. You can just be good at solving problems, be good at making things, be good at doing things, and the avatar can do the rest for you. So that's where it gets really exciting and beneficial to everyone, right? To every worker, to every person, is that this can be a sea change in how we view work and what we can do with, again, content we have already created, right? We're not stealing anyone else's content. This isn't a copyright issue. This is an issue of us taking our own work and making it better and making it work for us. So again, it's funny for me to say this, right? We don't need to work all the time. I work like 60, 70 hours a week routinely. I run an agency, I consult, I teach, I write, I do all sorts of stuff, and I love it for the most part. But the longer I do it and the older I get, I think more and more about what else could I be doing with my time? Could I be on a hammock, next to a river chilling out? Sure, I might get a little bit bored, but sure, I could do that. I could do all these other things. And I think, as we develop into this sort of next era of work and think about the future of work, we can think about how part of that future is us working less or us working smarter. And obviously a lot of other social things will need to change to make this a reality. You know, we'll need some form of, you know, whether it's universal basic income, whether it's, you know, just some form of like government subsidized housing for people who aren't working as much, right? We can rethink work and wages and time. Like this could be an opportunity for us to fundamentally shift how we think about everything. So that's my sort of optimistic, sort of kooky vision for how all of this could work. I know we've got a couple minutes left, so I'd love to answer any questions. Some of you might think this is, you know, kind of insane, so if you think it is, let me know and we can talk about it. But yeah, anyone have any questions or thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, who was first? Okay. Hey.
I was wondering about the physical world.
Okay.
So you mentioned like you showed the Trader Joe's picture. You can say you can have your avatar. So you showed the Trader Joe's picture. You say you can have your avatar go do the shopping and then
Yeah.
your groceries appear at your door. How did the groceries get sorted to your door?
So, I mean, someone would have to do that work, right? So someone this is not like meant to replicate every job that every human does. Like there will still be somebody who needs to, at least at this point, obviously robotics is moving in a direction where somebody will eventually, you know, robots will eventually do some of this work. Robots will eventually deliver things. So this is not meant to say like humans will no longer have to work. This is meant to just sort of say like, all right, humans can be more efficient about their time and more intentional about their time. And then, you know, it will again create other opportunities for folks who are, you know, in the delivery business or in the sort of sorting and packing business. Like it will free them up, you know, because like let's say you work as a delivery person, right? You go home, this makes your life easier too. You go home after your shift, you don't have to then go to the grocery store, go to the pharmacy. Your avatar can do it for you. So this isn't going to necessarily destroy all jobs, right?
Yeah, so I guess I'm not worried about destroying all jobs. I guess I'm wondering what the emphasis on efficiency does to align the sort of physical human aspects, I think, and you know, does training and does the physical labor and last mile work or these kinds of systems. So I was curious how, I guess how you're thinking about where the physical world shows up in that.
Well, like the physical world still shows up and exists, right? Like your avatar can do the work in the metaverse, but you're still going to the beach, you're still going out with your friends, like you are still existing in the physical world, right? And you're still existing as yourself in the metaverse, not just as your pre-programmed avatar, right? Like if you go to a party with your friends in the metaverse, it can be you, right? The idea of this pre-programmed avatar is really to sort of do the first mile or the first X number of miles, right? The sort of sorting functionality. And then the last mile is the human element. So it's not kind of getting rid of the real world. I don't think we should ever do that. But it's really about kind of maximizing efficiency so that people can spend more time out in the real world doing the things they enjoy, right? And not time like standing in line at the pharmacy because they need to go pick up a prescription or whatever. No one likes that. I mean, maybe people do, I don't.
Yeah, so sorry, I was just wondering, I was kind of going to ask the same question as you. See, going back to the example of your husband standing in line for the unemployment, how does the avatar know what question to ask?
Well, so, you know, it's using artificial intelligence, so it'll get smarter and smarter the more data it collects and the more data you input, right? So
you put an input into the avatar rather than going straight to the person that you talk to.
Well, so there's a couple of things. The first is, you know, you could certainly have a pre-programmed function where it's like, hey, I need to call, you know, like people call customer service hotlines for a lot of the same issues, right? Oh, my medical claim got denied. Oh, my bank card got stolen, I need a replacement. Oh, you know, the fraud with the unemployment office, like that happened on a massive scale in New York State, right? And I'm sure other places too. So you could definitely say like, here's the challenge, here's what I'm trying to solve. check those boxes, and then your avatar goes and does it for you. So yeah, it requires like a little bit of setup. And on the other side, right, those pre-programmed avatars know what questions will likely be asked, right? People tend to ask the same questions over and over. There's so much training data out there at this point. Like, customer service people could just program that in. And again, if it's the type of thing where the avatars can't solve it for whatever reason, then it gets kicked back to the human. But 90% of the time, it probably can be as simple as like, okay, file this form, and we'll get it done, type of thing. Anyone else?
Is it on? Okay. Hi, I'm Ryan. I specialize in avatar research and the future of work. So I think there was a lot of overlap between your talk and what I think about on a daily basis.
Awesome.
So just for the audience, I think that like the way that you're talking about avatars, it's almost like an embodiment of your own personal AI. So you can imagine an embodied AI could take on the role of a robot, you know, being autonomous here in physical space, or in the metaverse using your Ready Player Me option or whatever skin you want to throw on and go do those interactions. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on leveraging these personal AIs, even ones that, you know, speak, behave, make decisions like you would. I think there's still this bandwidth problem of it has to come back to the source. Your avatar has these discussions, and then you need to then process that data and decide what to do with it. Otherwise, you're maybe creating a, you know, higher self that is this oracle of all of you and all of these different experiences, which I'm also, I think that's super valid. I would want to make, you know, Super Ryan and consult with him and be like, yo, am I like on the base here? But I think it makes us fundamentally question, you know, what role do we then play as the creators of, you know, what could be these super intelligent systems that could surpass ourselves. So my question to you is, do you also see this bandwidth problem? Have you thought about, you know, when you send a million versions of yourself out there and they all report back, what role do you play? And
yeah, I mean, at this point, you're almost like your own avatar manager, right? So to be clear, the avatar that you have is fed off of your own data, right? So I'm not going out there asking this avatar to be in the style of myself. I'm programming this avatar based on sort of an ever-expanding realm of content that I have created. So, you know, part of it is like I'm going to have to keep creating content in order to keep my avatar fed. So that's where I'm going to have to spend maybe more time. You know, I don't know that the avatars will ever get to sort of this super genius oracle place, although that would be really interesting and cool. But I think the other point is like, yeah, exactly. How do you manage the incoming? How do you manage all the inputs your avatar is giving you? And I think that's where it gets kind of interesting. And I think, you know, we can think about how we report this stuff out, right? So I can program my avatar to say, okay, I only want to be notified about discussions that meet a certain threshold, right? So I'll give you an example. This is a very concrete example. So I run my agency, and every day I am approached by people who are like, yeah, I want to do something in VR. I think it'd be cool for my company. I have this project. Now, the first question I always ask is, okay, how real are you, right? Are you just kind of like, oh, I read a book about VR. I think it's neat, right? That's great, and I'm happy for you. But I have a business to run, I have payroll to make, capitalism, so I can't just spend all my time talking to people about, yeah, isn't this stuff neat, right? I need to know you have a budget, I need to know you have like an RFP, I need to know you have certain things in place. So, you know, right now I kind of have to just be a little bit of a jerk and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I can't talk to people about projects unless there's a budget behind them. However, you know, my avatar could do that work, and the final could be, okay, our avatars talked, there's a, you know, 200K budget, I'm making up a number. All right, that's a good budget. Now let's have the humans talk. So it's really like a filtering out mechanism. It's really just sort of like sending everything else to spam in a way. And because it's all being done by avatars, you don't necessarily need to know that any of it's happening, right? It can all run in the background. And what's nice about that is, like, let's say the avatars have a conversation and the avatars determine like, yeah, the budget's not there. Well, in real life, somebody might get all sort of hinky about that. They'll be like, well, why don't you want to talk to me even though I have no money? And it's like, because I'm a business person, not a charity, sorry. But if the avatars don't show that result, that person could come back 6 months later and be like, oh yeah, we raised money, let's chat now, and there's no sort of animosity or bad feeling. So that's kind of how I think about that stuff. It's really sort of the narrow casting efficiency feature. Do we have time for more, or is it lunch?
There is food in the other room, so we can take some more questions. Folks have. Yeah.
Oh wow, lots of questions, awesome.
I would imagine one would air check 1,000 avatars out there talking to this if it were you.
Sorry, can you say that again? Sorry.
How would you check errors?
Oh, errors, okay.
Because there's 1,000 people you don't want to spend your time checking. It would be a lot of things.
Well, so you could just do like random checks, right? So, you know, right now when people do sort of like testing, they pull, let's say, you know, if you're a factory, you don't check every single thing that goes through the factory. You check one of every 20 products to just make sure it's okay, and you sort of extrapolate out that the rest of the products are okay. So I imagine a report would be generated where you sort of can watch your avatar in real time for a little bit, and if they're like, oh, this person is saying exactly the wrong thing, then you can go in and kind of check it, right? You wouldn't be watching hours and reams of conversation, that would make no sense, but you just do like a quality assurance check every so often to make sure your avatar is not out there like saying insane stuff.
Was it a dramatically different product? It's not a standardized widget. It's a rather unique conversation. And further, you know, there's some things you can do in that way that are like systematic or repeated a lot, but then further going you go, it's just these kind of random things that happen.
Well, it's trained to get smarter and smarter, right? Like the algorithm is trained on your data to get smarter and smarter and better and better, and the more data you add to it, the better. But you know, let's say, so one error that I could see happening with this is, like I have a very uniquely spelled first name. There's only a few other people with the spelling of my name out there, right? But potentially it could get that data confused, right? It could think Cortney Harding, the woman who's a wedding photographer in Minneapolis, you know, all of a sudden my avatar's talking about wedding photography, which I know nothing about. So kind of like correcting for that and getting the data to be smarter and smarter, I think is something that we'll have to do manually at first. Obviously, if your name is like John Smith, that's going to be more challenging. You're going to have to figure out a better way to sort of make sure it's your data and not somebody else's data. So it's not going to be perfect, but it is going to be the type of thing that you really, really train over time. Anyone else, or we?
Super interesting idea. I just have one wrinkle that I can't iron out in my mind. So
Okay.
maybe you could think out loud about this. I'm thinking about all of this personal data that would go into the AI and how that would be an absolute nightmare if somebody hacked it. So what are your thoughts on keeping things secure?
Yeah, I mean, that is a huge issue, right? So that's going to be one of the things that has to get solved. And, you know, like you could sort of, so as you're sort of building this framework, you could figure out, okay, what data out there exists about me that I don't want included in this, right? Now, the problem is, you know, that data is already out there. So, you know, if somebody really wants to know like my social security number, I'm sure it's on the dark web somewhere, right? Whether that's in the metaverse or whether that's just on the dark web, I mean, it's still out there. So I think that's part of it. I think you could also sort of have, as you're building your avatar, have boxes for like, okay, I want things from YouTube associated with me, or TikTok, or Twitter, but I don't want, you know, this site or that site included, right? So I think you're just gonna have to have some sort of setup on the front end where you can exclude certain things. Now, like, it's gonna get corrupted at some point just because it will, because that's just how this stuff works. But again, I think that's where the quality control comes in, is every 20 conversations get sent to you and recorded, and you can go through and be like, oh no, this person's giving out my home address. Go in the system and solve for that. Like there can be steps in place. It's not gonna be perfect, it's never gonna be perfect, and that's why like my credit card info is, I'm sure, on like 20 different dark websites, and fingers crossed that I don't get hacked or my account emptied. It just is what it is. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me extrapolate all this stuff out. All right, thanks everyone. And I guess lunch is next?
Yes, sorry about the little hiccup. So we're back in here at 1:30 for a talk about virtual production, but there's food down in the exhibit hall, and we welcome you back. I think you can mute notifications. Once they give me the green light that the stream's back, we'll... All right, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the lunch. Saw most of the food was gone except the meatballs. Maybe they weren't a hit. Well, thank you all for coming back. We have an exciting talk next about virtual production from Michael Alfar. Michael is one of the many pioneers in the media server-driven virtual production revolution. Working closely with White Light, they developed the very first smart stage for the award-winning Magic Cube, Eurosport Discovery. During the COVID pandemic, Michael co-starred in the very first XR stage in Belgium and kept producing and delivering virtual design and consultancy for various international virtual productions. Some of Michael's work is displayed at the Ross School of Business in their virtual production studio, which was the very first commercial smart stage produced and delivered by White Light. We are excited to welcome Michael to the summit. Thank you.
Yeah, you just took 2 slides of mine the way you are.
Sorry.
Anyway, hi everybody. So we're going to be talking about virtual production for mostly film and broadcast. So something else completely different from VR applications. We've got half an hour and I'm going to spend a fair few minutes of that making you watch some videos, which is always fun. Just a little roster here. These are being recorded. So we're just going to go through, who I am, a couple of videos, talk about the difference between 2D, 2.5D, and 3D. Looking at a couple of LED volumes, what a frustum is, and how do we light in an LED volume, very important. And then the pipelines. And then we're going to be looking at motion AI just a little bit, because some of the previous talkers have done that a lot better than I have. And looking at some holodeck stuff and the Nerf stuff. So basically, looking ahead to what's being rolled out. I run Mouth Media, which is a very small design company based in the UK. We are specialized in AR and content design, AR and XR content design, AR production, XR consultancy, and VP supervisor. We'll touch on VP supervisor later on in the talk. I'm going to make you watch a small video of anything that's been created in XR over the past couple of years, mainly with our friends from Wildlife. So everything in this video is shot in an XR volume, meaning a floor and walls and set extension. all of these have been shot over the past 2, 3 to 4 years in XR volumes, as I said, mostly with our partners from White Light. And as Jeremy said, the very first commercial XR stage ever was right here in the Ross Business School. So these guys came out to IBC, I think it was in 2018, and saw the potential and said, we want one. And that's how the ball got rolling, and then it spread out all over the world. But to be fair, and I'm not exaggerating, the very first one, that was us right here on campus. And then they loved it so much, they've now installed the second one. So there's 2 of these volumes up at the Ross Business School, and it's very exciting to see how they take this forward and use this technology to get their lessons and their colleges to a next level. And then there's another one coming, just down the road, which is very exciting. So yeah, it's fair to say that you guys are trendsetters when it comes to using XR and not being afraid to use it. So I always say XR is VR without the goggles, because you can see people in the environment. You're not separated by this solo experience of wearing a goggle. And then VP, which is what we're going to talk about today, is XR without the LED floor. So basically, this is an XR stage. You've got your LED walls and a floor. You've got your set extension, and that creates your whole picture. And then for VP, mostly used is basically a wall, potentially some side walls, and then the real world set. So there's not often used with a virtual, with an LED floor, because there's some issues with the floor, issues is not the right word, some limitations when it comes to virtual shadows and reflections. Now, Move AI is coming into the equation, and so the virtual shadows will be solved very, very soon. But VP, to my experience, they don't like, in film especially, they don't like the floor because it's missing that grounding, and it has an effect on the color. So that's why I say VP is a wall, some set extension, but no floor. So virtual production, you can read the text on YouTube later, but it's basically, it's green screen without the green, and it allows content creators to see the environment that they're working in. It allows actors to feel at home in the set. It allows directors to work with actors feeling more at ease rather than just looking at a green screen. And it uses this natural lighting and the natural reflections that come off the LED volume, which is so important when it comes to creating in-camera VFX. Good news is there's another 2-minute video coming up, but this is something that we've got. So we run our own little VP studio over in Belgium, and it's going well. We've done a few demos, we've done a few commercial projects, but this video that I'm going to play you now kind of shows really well what the added value is of a LED-based virtual production studio. So this is what you guys are building just down the road, some similar type of stage. Before we go into that, I just want to have a quick comparison between 2D, 2.5D, and 3D. There's three possible solutions for a virtual production workflow. Again, this is all a personal opinion, so you guys might think different, and we'll happily debate that. But for me, the 2D workflow is it's basically projection. There's no tracking going on. It's basically just a backdrop, which works well when the camera is positioned in the right angle. There's a lot of advantages there. It's low complexity, systems simple, pre-production simple. It's either projection or an LED. You've got minimal crew and build time. You've got minimal testing needed, and the content creation can be done in a wide variety. You can have pictures, you can have footage that you've shot yourself. It doesn't have to be real-time 3D content. There could be wins, which I say, they need a bit of money, but the problems are, it's a tough word, that problems, but limited adjustments during the shoot. You can't really, when you go with pre-rendered content and the director says, I don't like it in daylight, I want it in nighttime, you're basically, screwed. You need to go and re-render this thing. So that's the difference between real-time and pre-rendered. You don't have any depth, you don't have any parallax, you have no tracking, basically you have no flexibility. So for certain solutions, the 2D workflow is going to be your way out, mainly budget and time restricted. It's used quite a lot, and we'll look at another example about a car plate in a minute. The next step up is the 2.5D, which is kind of the after effects of virtual production workflow. So it's in between the 2D and the 3D. So where the complexity starts to get a bit larger than for the 2D workflow. Still projection or LED, your crew starts to build up a little bit. You have to build the system a little bit before, so you're already needing a pre-production day. Whereas in 2D, you can just turn up in the morning, set it up, color it, and then you're shooting. You could potentially do this with camera tracking, advisably with camera tracking. It's 2D disguised as three dimensions. So the camera tracking, again, it's a pro, but it's also a con, because it needs time, it needs crew, it needs money. You've got more flexibility, but you're still limited. You still cannot change your content on the fly. What you can change is your parallax, your depth of creating your different fields of view. This is where you start needing a media server, you start needing timelining, and it's added value, but at a cost compared to 2D. Your 3D workflow, which is the one that I prefer, is obviously because it's got your maximum flexibility. You're doing a real-time content piece, you're tracking in real time, and because it's real-time content, you can change anything and everything that you want on the fly. You can change it from day to night, you can move the trees around, you can move the road around. Director comes in, has had a bad night, doesn't like what you've created, wanted yellow bricks rather than red bricks. All of these are things that you can change on the fly. Obviously that comes at a massive cost, not only in budget, but also in time, in crew. You've got to work with virtual lighting, you've got to continue that virtual lighting into the real world. If the sun is coming from this angle in your virtual world, your DOP needs to continue that lighting onto the subject or the actors, otherwise it just won't gel together. The downsides to that is it's extensive pre-production and planning. It's not simple. Nothing is simple in virtual production, and nothing is simple in XR. So you need to think about these things long beforehand. You need to do your storyboarding, you need to do your shot list, you need to think about what lenses you're going to use, because once you start shooting outside your volume, this is when you need your set extension. And so there's a lot to be taken to take into account. You need extensive resources. You need servers, you need matrices, you need trackers, so it's quite costly doing this, but it obviously gives you the best possible result and the best possible flexibility. For that to work, like in a VP workflow, as in an XR workflow, there's a lot of moving parts, and they all need to sync up. One of the main elements is the exact location of your mesh. Your LED mesh is so important. A lot of people forget that. Or they'll put an LED wall in and say, hey, there's the wall, let's shoot. But if you want to track it, and if you want to accurately project onto the LED wall and have your set extension seamlessly connect into your LED wall, you need to know exactly what inclination. There is no single LED wall which is a perfectly straight line, horizontal and vertical. Everything torses a little bit. If it's not with heat, it's the weight. So all these panels are not 100% 90 degrees. What we always do is when we have made a change to a wall, we have it scanned, and then that gives you an accurate 3D mesh. You put the 3D mesh into your media server, and that's how you get a correct projection of your camera frustum onto the LED wall. This is our current LED setup in our studio over in Belgium. So we've got a curved main wall. It's not the biggest, but the question is, do you need big? Like, the bigger, the more pixels you need to render out to, the more machines you need, the higher the cost. And this is where, right now, we're still a bit in that zone of production companies not willing to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a day to go into the largest volume. I love seeing the largest volumes in the world. I just don't see them commercially being interesting at this point in time. So smaller volumes are quite interesting because the rental price of that per day is still in the zone of where a producer doesn't have a heart attack and thinks, yeah, we can do this. What else? You see the top screen there, that's just a light filler. It's a very low res, you couldn't shoot on it, but it fills in the natural light. And the two side screens as well are mobile, so you can move them in and use natural lighting as a source of light. We'll look at an example of that in a minute. But before we do, I want to talk about the frustum. So the frustum is the area that the lens, I know there's a more scientific explanation for that, but for me, it's the area that the lens projects onto the LED wall. This is the little bit that you see moving over the wall. This is what we call the frustum. The frustum, when you're in a wide angle, that frustum is a lot larger. When you're zoomed up, when you're in a close-up, that frustum is small. So if you didn't have anything else on your LED wall, you would have a lot of black, which then defies the whole need of the whole theory of using natural lighting and natural reflections. That's why we often double up, so we have another perspective that we fill the whole LED volume in that gives us that natural lighting, which is of the same scene, not necessarily the same angle, but of the same scene. So if the scene's blue sky, then we fill the LED with blue or something akin to a blue sky, so that that light spill helps us out with making it more real. This is a setup here. So as you can see, the darker part in the middle is your frustum. That's what your camera projects onto the LED. That could be, depending on the lens you use, it's narrow or it's wide. Then you fill in the rest of your LED volume on the lighter gray areas. And then everything outside that, even the roof, everything outside that gets covered by set extension. Basically, an AR overlay that fills your entire image with your CGI content, and where your LED is, it kind of cuts a hole in that, and that's where you put your actors and your speakers, and that's the whole principle of XR. You know, if you want to see that at work, I invite you to go up to the Ross campus and have a look there how that works. They've mastered that to perfection. The frustum here is quite nice. This kind of shows you how the frustum glides over an LED wall with the camera. You can see the camera move, and that drives that frustum. Now you can see perfectly well that the background layer isn't necessarily the same angle as the frustum, but it's kind of in the same angle, and that's all you need, because whatever's outside frustum isn't being recorded. It's only what's inside frustum that's being recorded on tape. So you can put anything you want outside there, as long as it gives you that same look and feel that you're looking for to kind of fill in the rest of your space. So let's talk a little bit about lighting in LED volumes, and the key word here is less is more. We often get productions in and they bring a whole truck, and the truck is loaded with tons and tons and tons of lighting because, hey, we're going to need all that. And we always say, you won't. And then they say, well, what do you know? You're just, it's fine. Let's shoot it. And then as soon as they start shooting, they start putting away these lights because the LED volume itself is a huge light box, and it has your content. So if there's contrast in your content, if you go from day to night, you drive in and out of a tunnel, the LED volume reflects that. There is no better way to simulate that than using LED screens to create your lighting. So a couple of tips for the lighting people in the room, if there are any. If you're ever working in an LED volume, you've got to understand that you're not in a green screen. So don't light it like a green screen. Use the content, use the output of the LED volumes to generate your main source of light. It won't give you a hard shadow. You'll still have to simulate a hard shadow if you want to extend the sun. But 80% of your lighting is done by your content and your LED volume. You know, use natural lighting. Be smart with your reflections. That's why you have an LED volume. Use the reflections, if there's any reflections to be used. Don't be afraid to move that mobile screen in right up to here, because you know this is your frame. You can move it in and get the best possible reflections. You're working in a really big light box, and a lot of people tend to forget that. This is a huge light box. There's no need to hang 20 space lights in the ceiling and then cover them off with flags. There's absolutely no point in doing that. I'm not talking big Hollywood productions. I'm talking, medium-sized productions like the ones that we're working on. Extend your virtual lighting, move it into in your Unreal world. If the sun doesn't suit you coming from that angle, or the camera, the DOP doesn't like it, then you just move it around and move your real world lighting around as well. And if possible, I would advise to use RGBW soft lighting, so you can have that little extra element of white, pure white, to mix it into your colors. This is and we're going to watch a little video again. This is a setup of a car plate that we did in our studio last summer. There was no lighting involved, none. Basically what they did was they just covered off the top screen to not cast the direct reflections on it, and then they used a huge butterfly screen in front of it to create lighting. So everything you see in the next video is pure LED lighting. Absolutely pure LED lighting, and I can talk over it because there's no music on this one. So it was a French film, and they had 4 car scenes, and they realized really late in the project that they couldn't possibly logistically get the whole team from the French Alps to Paris, back to the motorway. So there were 3 or 4 very different scenes spread over France, and they only had a week to shoot. So they came to us. We got them the car plates from a guy that we worked with in LA, he's mounted a very clever 9-camera system on his car, and he's driven all around the world and has captured all of these things. So everything you see here is basically that car plate on the LED volume. And if you look at how the lighting inside the car changes with the landscape, there's no way that you can recreate that with any sort of softbox. This is the purest form of lighting, and this is the best form of lighting for single camera virtual production shoots. There's a lot more to talk about, but you only have 30 minutes, so we should do a whole conference on lighting for LED volumes. We'll do that next year. Let's quickly jump into the pipeline, because we had to make choices when assembling this talk. A typical pipeline for us in a VP is you've got your traditional movie hierarchy, you've got your producers and your writers and your directors and your DOPs, and that all stays the same. But then you've got a VP producer, because certain sequences of a film will be shot in a VP studio, and there's a VP producer that will organize that for you. He's in charge of your VP shoot. He's typically not from the studio, but he knows exactly how a studio works. Under that VP producer, you've got your VP supervisor, which is me, and then you've got a technical director who runs the whole technical side of things. And then you've got your Unreal artist. Now, I keep calling it Unreal. Unreal is a fantastic tool. I've been recently made aware that there's going to be a huge shake in the world, 23rd of June, when Apple make a big announcement. So let's call it Unreal Unity going forward. So the Unreal artist usually works for the movie company, for the production company, because you use that same file to do your previs and your storyboarding. So that's a thing that comes up in the next slide. So your Unreal artist is usually engaged by the movie company because, long before they get to you, they've been talking about this film, and they've been thinking about this film, and they've been dreaming up all these scenes and modeling these scenes. So these people, by the time they get to you, they've got this film in their head, and so you just have to help them make that. The Unreal artist then hands over the file to the Unreal integrator who works for the VP studio. So the Unreal integrator makes sure that this file is flawless. This file runs at the required frame speed. It runs at the resolution is set. If there's things that need to be cached out, he makes sure that the file will be ingested by the media server without any issues, because the last thing you want is showing up on the shoot day and saying, oh, well, the computer can't handle it, because then you've got real problems. Apart from that, we have a media server operator who then gets the file from the Unreal integrator and makes sure that that file actually shows up on the LED when it needs to show up on the LED in the section that it needs to show up. You've got your system engineer, your tracking engineer, a video engineer, and an LED engineer. There's a lot of engineers on a VP shoot. So this is kind of your basic hierarchy that you need to run a VP studio. Obviously, you can always do it with less, but we tend to advise you not to, because when you're on the stage and there's 50 people there and everybody's costing a huge amount of money, then you do not want to lose any time. And if there's an issue, you have to have the right person there to go and fix that issue. Did I skip one? No. So the VP supervisor, what does he do? So he leads the virtual production studio team. He's a bridge between your virtual producer. Remember, he works for the film company. He's not necessarily known with your studio, but he knows about VP. And then you've got your VP world, which is your team. You've got a very close working relationship with our department, because I've sat in creative meetings with film people where if you just let them do what they want to do, they'll reinvent the whole world. And sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes you've got to rein them in and say, well, it's a great idea. We can't really do it that way, but what about that way? So that's kind of the role of a VP supervisor, help them get to where they want to go in ways that are realistic and doable. He's a consultant to the film director, not always, but you'll find that film directors tend to get, the good directors anyway, they'll get an interest of what's going on, because they want to use this technology to become better storytellers. And for them to understand what's happening, they'll come and they'll talk to you, and they'll want you involved sooner. So that's when the best results are delivered, when everybody's kind of on the same page and everybody takes an interest in each other's work. And that's not easy, because VP, it's something new, and everybody talks about The Mandalorian. Yes, it's a fantastic product, but that's not mainstream. That's an exception to the rule. So for that to work, you just need to communicate with each other, and you need to be getting involved in the early stages. So if there's any producers in the house, get your VP team involved in the early stages. Don't wait till the last minute, because it'll cost you more, and it'll not be as productive. The pipeline, how does an Unreal file, Unreal/Unity file, travel going forward? So your art director has a sketch. He's got an idea in mind. That then kind of translates into an Unreal/Unity file. And that's your Unreal artist or your Unity artist that starts creating that file. That same file travels all the way through the film, from pre-production stage up to post-production stage, because in pre-production, seeing as the file's there and seeing as you're going to be shooting in that file, why not use it for your storyboarding? Why not start using to cut your shots? Put the right lens on your camera, have a look at it, put an avatar or a MetaHuman in the stage, and have them react the way you expect your actors to react once you're shooting, and do your shot list. When you get the lens right and you get the sensor size, once you get on stage, your result on stage and your previs should be 1-for-1, because there's no reason, if you've got your mesh, you've got your lens, you've got your sensor size, if all these parameters are correct, what you're going to shoot on stage is 1-for-1 what's in the previs. So that same file is now being used to cut your story together long before it leaves the office. Then that same file gets handed over to the VP studio. We use it to shoot it. And then that same file goes to post-production. So how does that work? So you've got your file. It goes to your integrator. It goes into your media server and onto your LED. We've established that. The LED gets shot by your camera. That's your raw footage. Your camera shoots your actor and your LED stage. On the side, you've got your camera tracking. That camera tracking gets recorded. So now you've got the footage that you've shot on stage with your camera. You've got your camera tracking. And remember, you still have your source file. So you could go in post-production, integrate your camera tracking onto the Unreal file, and then you can start cutting and pasting things that you're missing. And I got the feeling I've got to wrap up here, Jeremy. Is that what you're? Aw. Yeah, can I just quickly, very quickly, I won't. So basically, where does AI come into place? Motion AI, please go and see Ray about this again, because it's very interesting to create virtual shadows. Like when you've got an avatar of yourself, Motion AI will give you a copy of yourself in virtual world, which will then create virtual shadows, which is the missing link at this point in time between making it real and making it look like it's, what is it? Not going to play the video, unfortunately. The other one is holodecks. Holodecks are, look, this is a 30-second video. Can I play it?
And again, sort of how these panels
This is so exciting.
Ones that are working today, you can stitch those together. In fact, at Life Lab, they've actually started to put two and more of these together. And the more you stitch together, the further out you can project the holographic objects. And that goes all the way to infinity. So you can eventually imagine buildings, instead of having LED video walls at LAX, you can actually have true holographic portals. And it will look real. It will look like you're looking out of a window, or maybe even better, looking at reality. It's fantastic technology. And ultimately, we are so close to this becoming real that the holodeck isn't, it's not even decades away. It's this decade. It might be expensive for the first half of this decade, but by the end of it, I don't think it will be. I think it'll be, the cost of a very high-end home theater system to get something like this running in your home.
So the volume is low, but what he says is in this decade, holodecks will become affordable. Now that's exciting. And we shall have another talk about that next year to see where they are. Anyway, I'm sorry, I've got to.
You want to wrap the final?
Well, just very quickly on the neurons radial field. It's basically, this is exciting. This is the new, everybody's talking about photoreal content that you want in your XR stage or your VP stage. Nerves, as they're called, nerves are the answer to that. So basically, you make a bunch of pictures of something, and then your AI will create a photorealistic 3D model. NVIDIA, you've got to love them. They put out fantastic videos on their conferences. We're a long way away of making perfect nerves, but we're getting there, and it's going really, really quickly. So you just go out, make a bunch of pictures, run it through an AI module, and it gets you a 3D, photorealistic 3D model of the world that you will be shooting in, and then, the possibilities are endlessly. And with that, I'm really going to just wrap it up and just kind of, that's it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, maybe while Bill is getting set up, we could take one.
Yeah, sure.
But can you switch mics with?
Oh.
You can take this with you, but we have to do a mic swap for the live stream.
All right, okay.
So, question, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he'll give you.
You can take. Do you want to take his mic?
I'm just going to get demiked, but I'm listening to you.
Usually the Unreal is more associated with virtual production than is Unity currently. What are the advantages of Unreal that makes it seem to be so popular in virtual production as opposed to Unity?
Well, that's a very good question. And we only use Unity Unreal at the moment. There's a lot of films that use Unity. Sorry, it's done. So there's a lot of VFX companies that use Unity because they've got a lot of coding involved, and then it seems to be easier. Unreal, a lot of us can just follow a couple of YouTube videos, and we'll be getting going with Unreal, and we'll get a lot of good results. Everybody's great with the desert and the rocky scene with Lumen and Nanite. But I think Unity is just.
You're going to use my mic for the live stream.
Oh, sorry. Oh, God. I'm really making a mess of this,
I know,
aren't I?
sorry.
So Unity is kind of it's the next level, apparently. And the reason for the world apparently going to change to Unity lies with Apple. I've been told this. I'm not entirely convinced that that's the case, but all the AR platforms will turn to Unity. Therefore, all these assets will be already existing. Therefore, a lot of people will want to shoot their VP with Unity going forward. So if you're thinking about picking up a 3D package, 3D real-time software package, I invite you to look into Unity and then tell the world how to use it.
There's a lot hinging on Apple's proposed futures, right?
Exactly. There's a lot hinging on Apple, yeah.
Okay.
Phil.
Yes, hello. It was an interesting talk. A few weeks ago, Unity put out on YouTube, I believe, the demo of a very similar virtual production environment. I'm wondering, what's the difference between that and what you've got going on as well? Why does the frustrum look so interesting out in the field? It's a different, it kind of plays a trick on the mind, like what are you actually looking at?
Yeah.
It's moving across the city. And when you zoom in the camera, does it zoom in the virtual world to?
So basically, your virtual world listens to your focal length. So when you start zooming in, you're narrowing your frustum, you're actually zooming into, but because the thing is, you should never look at, in virtual production, you should never look at the LED without a camera, because when you start looking to an LED without a camera, it really messes up your mind, because your frustum is only visible, you should only judge your frustum through your camera. When you start looking at it from next to the camera, you're thinking, well, that's weird, the perspective's not right, and same with the zoom. You just, because you're basically just zooming into a 2D screen. But what happens is you're actually zooming into a 3D world being displayed on a 2D screen.
Right, so do the actors and the directors and everyone around, are they looking at the frustum at all times when they're filming? Is that the case? What's the point of the whole LED screen? They're not going to look at it.
Well, that depends. You can have the frustum. If you want to shoot an actor from one angle and the actor's looking that way, then you could actually put the point of interest on the LED there, saying, hey, the dragon's going to come over your left shoulder, make sure you look at that. Even though we're not showing the dragon because we're in a close-up of the actor. So the frustum will be closed up behind him, but then in the second layer, you could actually put the point of interest and have that actor look at it, and that will make it real.
Whereas green screen, they don't know. You just have to imagine.
It's a tennis ball, isn't it?
Yeah,
green screen, a tennis ball on a floppy stick.
Yeah.
So, yeah? All right.
Thank you so much.
Lovely.
Really appreciate it.
Oh.
I'll take this
I'll
one.
do this.
We can make up. We'll give Bill the full half hour. Thank you, Michael. Next up, we have Bill Myers from Accenture. He is an accomplished dynamic technology executive with over 10 years of experience driving innovation, demanding excellence, incentivizing performance, and supporting growth. As a highly driven business executive and a visionary leader in the XR space, Bill has helped position the immersive industry at the forefront of innovation. A growing number of companies are turning to immersive technology for training, communication, design, marketing, and overhaul traditional processes to drive efficiencies and cost saving. Currently at Accenture, Bill is tasked with advising clients C-suite on their journey into the metaverse and implementing solutions that deliver measurable value to their organization. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Jeremy. All right, is that on? It's not on. There we go.
Screen. You're good.
All right, there we go. Thank you for the intro. That intro sounded really intense. I am not that person from whoever wrote that LinkedIn entry, so today will be a lot more informal of a presentation. Actually, it's a series of about 15 different photos, so spoiler alert, you're going to see a lot of my iCloud photos today. Hopefully, we're all here for a little bit of a history lesson of Bill, but also how it relates to my journey in the XR space. But I can't get started without acknowledging. So this is my fearless other half. This is Grace. She has been an enabler to a very nerdy hobby back in 2014, where I spent way too much money while we were dating on a virtual reality computer and a headset, the DK2 to be particular. and allowed me to go on this crazy journey in 2014 to take me to where I'm at today, which is very thankfully with Accenture leading some of our Metaverse initiatives. My focus has been on the public sector, so figuring out how public servants in particular can be using Metaverse technologies, which is incredibly exciting. So when I was at the first hackathon for virtual reality, I had a chance to try haptic gloves. How many here have put on haptic suits or haptic gloves before previously? A few of us. Okay. This technology has been around for a while, but making it mainstream is something that a lot of very brilliant folks are currently working on and bringing it to our day-to-day life, including what we have currently in the Quest 2 and the Quest Pro, with the ability that when you grab something, it has that little sense of vibration. And what I love about that, and this particular company based out of Cincinnati, Ohio, is any chance I can get when I'm creating experiences to give that little extra level of immersion, I go for it. Now, when I give people immersive experiences, I go all out, to the point to where in 2015, I ran a meetup group and still run that meetup group till this day. In both Cleveland and Akron, Ohio, there's over, I want to say, probably about 1,000 members between the two groups. And the reason why everyone showed up to those meetups was not to hear me talk. It was to play with the really expensive technology that I brought. And especially back in 2015, that's what brought people to the table, was being able to play with the tech. So what does one do when they have a passion for this technology? And during these meetup groups, Fortune 50 companies would send representatives and ask me for free advice, and I would just give it all away. Well, maybe there's a business model there somewhere, so I started a company called New Territory, which is a consulting firm and design studio, but it needed a front door that was approachable and fun. So the other half of the business, so on nights and weekends, we cash flowed the business as a virtual reality arcade, which is what we see here. So this was the way to lower the barrier to entry, interact and play with the technology, which we all know in this room is such a crucial part to having a productive conversation around this technology. And then you can talk to Bill putting on his hat as a consultant once we've level set and played with the technology. So playfulness is a huge, huge part of who I am with this tech. And if you haven't tried VR, AR, but you try to tell me what it is, I will know and also have a headset on hand to give you a demo. So watch out. Back in 2015, Google Cardboard was a thing. I know some of us are snickering right now. Some of us are shaking our head right now, and I'm with you. It's surprising that for something like Google Cardboard, especially with the New York Times installation where millions of these went out to New York Times subscribers, that our bodies, our minds should not be doing 360 video through these headsets, and physiologically, we can't hold our hands up for more than 3 to 4 minutes, which is all we should be doing in a Google Cardboard experience anyway. So when I put this together, this is to show that at times I was at the top of my game, and at times I was not my best. And this is one of those vulnerable moments that I'm exposing to everyone today. This is in 2015 a way I thought to evangelize technology. I learned a lot from that situation and continued to give demos, and again, you see the Oculus DK2, getting people to just play, especially a USB connected Xbox hand controller. That's how we interacted with these platforms at this time. I also dabbled a lot in 360 video production. And if there's a low barrier entry way to get to just play with the tech and start building with it, when I go to schools, elementary schools, high schools, even universities, I say grab yourself a 360 camera from Best Buy, $300 to $400, and just start to shoot and play. And when you shoot and play a lot, which is what I did back in 2015, 2016, you need to surround yourself with a team that's also willing to play around. And this is like that photo of like your garage before your startup sort of takes off to the next level. So this was a room that we occupied in a small town in Ohio, and we just had a very passionate group of XR developers that yes, those are TV boxes that we are building out of our desks. And we were recreating a historical experience for our city that, that actually had gone over really, really well. But again, you know, that was my old, not old dog, but the dog was about 6 months at the time, now he's 5. But it's just fun to see how far things have come since then. One way that I like to show people sort of how my philosophy is around making technology accessible is this experience. This is the Ohio and Erie Canalway Coalition. We partnered with them in order to make the pathway along the Erie Canal accessible to people from a historical standpoint. So download an app. At the time in 2016, that's all we really could do. There was no web AR at the time, or very limited usage for what we were trying to do. And as you walk through this AR boat, there would be pop-ups and voiceovers, and again, lower that barrier to entry to having these incredible immersive experiences. Now, fast forward a couple years, this is a shoot that we did. My wife and I and the rest of our team, we landed a project where we were working with Medicaid, the Medicaid population, actually the clinicians for the Medicaid population, because we were noticing the ask was there was a high infant mortality rate in Ohio. How do we start to move the needle on infant mortality rate? And our best guess at the time was putting people through a day in the life of what it was like to be a Medicaid recipient. And so this was probably about a year-long project, and this opportunity not only let me direct this video shoot, but as a result of all the work that we did notice a slight decrease in infant mortality rate as a result of the work that we did, which was incredibly exciting. Now, this is probably one of the most exciting things that I've ever had a chance to work on, and that was, I was given the advice once that if you're good at something, do it faster. And I was really good at the 360 workflow from shooting, editing, producing, and getting it into a headset. And I had surrounded myself with a team that was also very good. So what do you do with that skill set? That's probably the most challenging thing you could possibly imagine. How about end-of-life care? So we would show up to hospice centers. We would go to a patient and ask them what their last request was before they passed away. And we would go record that favorite fishing hole, their favorite vacation spot, maybe a loved one's home, curate it in 360 video, and within 24 hours have it viewable in a headset for everyone in the room simultaneously. So not take the headset off, put it on someone, take the headset off, put it on someone. Let's get 15 headsets in the room, hit the play button so that the caretakers, the family, the patient, they can all take off the headset when it's done and say, we went somewhere together, and have that conversation. That content shifted to the veteran population shortly thereafter, so we were able to give closure to thousands of military veterans across the world, across the United States in VA hospitals as a result of them being able to see these bases or these war memorials and having closure after many, many years. A lot of them were able to open up and talk about being in the war for the first time as a result of having that closure that's enabled by these 360 video experiences. Now, I don't know if anyone has tried Birdly before. Has anyone seen this or heard about this? But from a sensory experience, you are laying down on a platform. There is an HTC Vive on your face, and you're using paddles or rotating your hands and wrists, and a fan is blowing in front of you as you become a bird flying down a mountain, and it feels, I don't know what it's like to be a bird, right? But in my mind, I think it would be something very similar to this. So this is at Area 15 in Las Vegas. I was here a couple weeks ago and got to try this. The key to doing this is doing it when it first opens up, because otherwise the headsets, after a few hours, gets a little sweaty, especially on these like highly emotional experiences. So just word to the wise, that happens. So what I loved most about this experience is that it is wild and out there, and if you want a conversation starter about the power of immersive technology, this is the way to do it. Also, this is not a great first experience for virtual reality. And a lot of my colleagues who said, oh, I want to try VR for the first time, they queued up in line, and I told them, especially after a few drinks, this is not where you want to begin your VR journey. I'll pull out my Quest 2, and let's find a nice 360 video to usher ourselves into the metaverse, but let's not start with replicating what it's like to be a bird going down a 20,000-foot mountain. So the last part of this journey, before I have to wrap, I want to talk about how important it is to have or play with virtual collaboration platforms. So this one is Engage XR. Probably yesterday and today you've heard of multiple virtual collaboration platforms, but they work to bring people together and have productive conversations. Now, I'm seeing this through the lens of work, but this can also be used for play. And I would have meetups in alt space where we would shoot off fireworks, play basketball, play darts, and all hang out together during COVID because we weren't able to meet up in person. So I would say if you have any interest in virtual reality and think that play is fun, take a moment to try out something like Engage. There's a platform called Arthur. These platforms for work, and get people together that are interested and curious with this technology and just play. And at the end of the day, just playfulness with this tech is the #1 way to get people to have a productive conversation around the technology. I see a lot of people just like, yeah, I get it. Like, we get it. Like, that's how you get started with all of this. And since 20 minutes was my time, I think I hit it.
If you have more?
I'm good. So if anyone has any questions, otherwise you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I will hit the accept button if I get that request within the next half hour or so. Otherwise, you know how LinkedIn is. So yeah, I'll answer some questions about my trip through the metaverse for the past 10 years.
Are you able
or
to
so.
talk about any of the stuff you're doing in your current role?
Yes.
With Accenture, I know a lot of training, a lot of like
Absolutely.
onboarding and things like that.
I would say Accenture has done a tremendous amount of onboarding in the metaverse. The nth floor is an experience that I got to try out as a new joiner, and from a culture perspective, really made me feel like I was at home, right? I came from startup land, and to be able to meet my coworkers in the metaverse and play with the platform and meet people and be productive, leveraging alt space, rest in peace, I think was, for me personally, an excellent, I felt like I was where I belong. Now, as Jeremy mentioned, I focus on the public service space. So let's say, for example, there is a Department of Corrections that is looking to move the needle on recidivism rates when someone is in prison. How do we use virtual reality technology, augmented reality technology, to train people before they go back out into the real world? If they entered as a teenager and now they're 40, 50, 60 years old, they have no idea how to operate an ATM, a smartphone, public transit systems. Can we use immersive technology to move the needle on recidivism rates as a result of making them feel more comfortable stepping out of the prison and into life again? So that's just one example of how I spend my days, is figuring out how to use tech for good, which is amazing that I get paid to do that. Any other questions?
Any questions? No? No questions?
All right, super.
All right, well, thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
I really appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you all for coming to our XR Summit. We have our student showcase starting up next. Behind you, we've still got the exhibit hall till 4, but really appreciate everyone coming out, and this is the end of our official presentation program. But please check out our student work and check out the exhibit hall if you want to try some of the experiences with Accenture. They have a number of headsets down there in the hall. So thank you so much.